Welcome to Tapped In. My name is David Figueroa-Martinez of DFM Coaching. And on this episode, we're going to be discussing the scalpel and the shield. And these are two great analogies for your offensive, defensive games and how you should probably approach developing both. The scalpel is your offense. When you're developing an offensive game, your job is really to get really in depth. You do not need to know 1,000 different techniques. You don't need to know 1,000 different ways to take people down or ways to attack, submissions. We sometimes think, especially at Blue Belt, that we need to spend a lot of time developing a lot of different attacks. The reality is you need maybe 5 offensive attacks. And it's probably even less if those offensive attacks translate to various positions. For example, if you want to get really good at Kimuras, and I use that example because that's my go-to, my bread and butter, the thing that I know really well. If you want to go and get really good at Kimuras, you're going to start finding them literally everywhere because the process to get the Kimura is really the same no matter what the position is. It's isolating an arm, specifically a wrist, and then getting the Kimura grip, and then transitioning to attack sequences. It doesn't take a lot to get to that position. Now, people are going to defend a certain way, and you're going to have to adjust and make that threat sometimes not look like a threat, and sometimes making something else look like a bigger threat so that they give you the Kimura grip. That is what I mean by sharpening and having a scalpel for your offensive capabilities. Again, you do not need a ton of submissions. There's this idea that, I need to know everything and I got to push forward and I got to address everything. You do not. You need something that you gravitate to, something that you have an inkling or a fascination with, and then making that your go-to, making that the thing that you're going to do. Some people are just going to, like I have a student who's great with triangles. I have shorter legs. It's not the go-to for me. But the triangle, like the Kimura, like the armbar, interchanges with all 3 of those along with the omoplata. So if you're great at one of these techniques that can be sought after or pushed for in various positions, you're not learning a new submission for each position. For example, again, the Kimura I can hit from damn near anywhere because it's so versatile. The armbar is similarly like that. If you watched Ronda Rousey, for example, a beautiful tactician when it comes to the armbar. She would hit that armbar off of takedowns, off of failed takedowns, off of mount, various positions. She would hit that, and you never really felt comfortable putting your hands on her because she can create that movement and transition into the arm attack. That's what you want. You want such dexterity in your attack, whatever that attack might be, that you've become so familiar with it that you understand where you can hit it, that you can hit it from various positions, fluidly, confidently, and that you understand the top 3 to 4 common responses based on the position. So when you are trying to get that style of, or that depth of knowledge, you're literally going to have to bore yourself to death in a little bit. Like it sounds weird to say. If you've been listening, you probably heard my story of going through the mounted armbar. For like 4 or 5 months, I ran every sparring session with the goal that I was going to get to pass the guard, get to side control, transition them out, isolate the arm, and then go for the armbar. That was my game plan for literally 4 months. And I got really good at it. Then I fell out of love with it, and I'm back on it again. So it's a position where I picked up so much data that I understood the top 3 responses in any facet or situation in that process. And then I chased the submissions, and then I got data on how the big guy responds to the armbar finish, how the little person responds to the armbar finish, how someone who's super technical responds to the armbar finish, how someone's maybe more brutish and they force an escape. I got to see all that stuff that I got really good at sensing which one was coming. And then you start feeling like a clairvoyant in a sense. Like you can predict this person's roughly blue belt, they're going to do this. This person's a brown belt, but they're smaller, they're going to respond this way. And you're going to pick up that sense of detailed orientation where it doesn't matter what they do. It doesn't matter if they try to bridge last minute. It doesn't matter if they try to yank the arm back. It doesn't matter if they try to hold everything down. You're going to have answers for every roadblock that they give you within this process. And that's going to come because you're going to spend so much time in it. And that's what I mean by the scalpel. You become surgical at everything you do when it comes to this technique. It doesn't, after a while, it doesn't matter if you tell them. Like right now, I'm on a kick of resharpening and reacquainting myself with the mounted armbar. I put it away for a little bit. I started focusing on other things, and somehow I found myself back to it. And then I'm applying different approaches and techniques to wrapping both arms instead of just one arm. And it's been so much fun to play. And I am now at the point where I feel so comfortable playing it that I need my opponents to understand that's where I'm going. So sometimes I'll tell, like recently I had a brown belt that I was rolling with, and I told him, hey, just so you know, I'm going to armbar you from out. And it's not me talking shit. It's not me trying to get into his head, although I do enjoy that aspect too. It's really, I want you to know where I'm going. I want you to know that I am going home right now. I need you to put up every possible roadblock along this route for me to get home. And I want to test myself to see how sharp this blade is and how technical I can be, where I want to get there with you knowing where I'm going. I want you to know exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to pass your guard. I'm going to go to mount. I'm going to isolate your arms. I'm going to get the armbar. You know the data. Now it's your job to stop it. How are you going to stop it? And sometimes you find something that me as the attacker, where I was like, oh, I didn't anticipate that. I get to work on something that I didn't necessarily think of. And then sometimes in some routes, they try to defend it a certain way, but I've seen this movie before. I know exactly the way it moves and what the character is going to do and where they're going to trip up and you're going to fall as soon as they hop out the bushes or whatever it might be. I don't have any concerns in that sense. I've seen this movie so often, so much. I will quote what you're going to do and encounter. That's the efficiency in the sharpness that you want to get to. And I start with white belts. I start doing the technique with white belts. I start picking up the data points of how they're going to respond to certain things. And maybe I do a technique much slower, no athleticism. I want to see if all my controls are set. And then I will pause at times just to see what they're going to do, let them think a little bit. And then I let them maybe escape just enough. And I go right back to it to see if I can recapture the positions that I need. And then I start transitioning deeper into the position and I continue to do that same process. And then when I feel comfortable, I could do this on the white belts pretty easily. Then I start upping the ante and I start doing it with the blue belts and then the purples and so on. I know I'm really comfortable with a technique when I could crush a purple belt with it. I know that I'm really comfortable and at a really sharp, detailed pace when I can start getting it on brown belts. And I just sit there for a bit and I just want to see how everything's working, how they're going to respond. And then ultimately I want to go with the black belts and see if I can get that same position. So again, if you're doing if you're trying to develop your offensive game, really just I suggest pick one or two offensive things that you want to do. In the course of it, you're going to encounter several learning points. For example, like I mentioned, I was passing the guard, going to side control, going to mount, isolating the arm, getting the arm bar. I'm creating lessons along the way because I have to learn how to really pass the guard. I have to learn how to really efficiently transition from side to mount, and then how to isolate the arms. So all those things are little mini lessons that you're going to have to get really good at before you could even finish. So if you make a goal, whatever, triangle from close guard, you're going to have to get really good at isolating arms. It's a huge skill set. And then you're going to have to get really good at transitioning from that position to the triangle position, and then making sure they don't dip out the back or they don't posture up. And you're going to get really good at doing that too. So I give myself a goal or two, and I make those kind of intertwined. For me, it was passing the guard, and then it was getting the mount and getting the armbar. So those were working in concert with each other. When it comes to the shield, it's a little different. For defensive measures, you don't have to know as much. And what I mean by that, in depth, like that depth of knowledge doesn't have to be super deep for defensive measures. I want to know how to defend almost in a more thought process, like a general form thought, and not necessarily in specifics. I want the concepts. Concepts being on my back, flat on my back is usually not a good thing. Concepts being, if I can turn to them and get onto my hip, I'm usually in a better spot. That's a concept. It's not necessarily a technique that I'm going to use to deploy against a offensive moving person. It's more of, no matter what the position is, this is something that will generally be putting me in a better position. I want to make sure that my elbows are tight. I want to make sure that when I frame, I'm not pushing or extending my hands away. That's musculature. That tires me out. I want to frame with my elbows and my forearms and the structure of my body minus strength. Strength is great early on in the bout. When you get tired, that strength goes away. And if you have the bad habits of using strength all the time, you're going to be in a really bad position after you get start getting cooked and your energy levels just aren't there. So understand the basics of posturing up if I'm in someone's guard. It's a concept. It's something that I should be doing all the time. If I'm bottom aside, I want to frame efficiently. I don't want to burn my arms out. I want to be on my side a bit. Anytime someone's passing the guard, I want to have 3 points of contact. 4 if everything goes right. I want to do these things so that getting me in a submission is difficult. And then if I'm in a submission, then it's the other things. Like if I'm in triangle, I want to make sure that I can posture up. If I'm in triangle, I want to try to get either my arm out or get the second arm in. Oftentimes, when I'm in armbar, I start to stack or I start gripping a certain way. So it's less about the specific like techniques that you do and more of, I need to make sure my elbows are tight. I need to make sure this is tight. I need to make sure I'm doing these things so that I'm harder to submit. I used to roll with a guy who was just superb when it came to defense. I could not submit this man. I would try my damnedest. My pride was like, I want to submit this guy. Brown belt, more of a hobbyist, quote unquote. And I say that, quote unquote, if you've listened to these, you know why. Some of the goal was, anytime I rolled with him was, I want to submit this guy just once. I don't think I ever submitted him. And he was just a defensive wizard on another level. And I just never figured him out. But I want to get to the point where I can submit even the guys that are super defensive. And he understood the defensive measures that it took to kind of like route people's games. understand something. When it comes to defense, you don't have to be right all the time. You have to be right once. When I am trying to submit someone, again, getting to mount, passing the guard, getting side control, getting to mount, isolating an arm or two, transitioning to that S mount, throwing my leg over, making sure I have the right grips, make sure I don't get teetered off. And when my leg comes over, make sure my grips are super tight, and then start working against the grips that my opponent has. You see how many steps there are in that? At any moment in that sequence, the defensive player can just has to do one thing right. They bridge when you try to throw the leg over and you lose the position. That's all you have to do. You don't have to get super technical. You just understand where the escape windows are, how to respond to them in a general sense, and then get out. So I don't have to ever be right 100% of the time. They do in order to get to the position that they want, in order to get to the submission that they want. I can ease into any one of those positions. And even when I miss a couple of benchmarks, now they swung the leg over and I'm in a really bad position. It's not the end of the world for me. I just have to keep calm and understand, hey, if I can bridge a certain way and get my elbow in, I'm out. If I can come up to my knees and stack them, I have a chance of getting out. You are fighting for that one chance. You do not have to be as technical. You just have to be right at one moment in that entire sequence to ruin their day. I'm hoping that this helps. One more thing. When you're doing the defensive stuff, I would suggest picking a white belt. You don't have to tell them ahead you're doing it. You can go through the course of the round and just play really defensive. Allow them to get top side, top half, mount, allow them to get your back, and just start defending from there. Every time you escape, leave an opening for them to get back, and then start playing the entire game again. And then if you feel comfortable with certain people where you can actually genuinely be honest with them and say, hey, do you mind starting in mount? I'm working on mount escapes. I'm working on back escapes, whatever. Allow them to start there and just start playing. And then when you get really good with the white belts, start doing that with the blue belts, or allow them also to get into certain positions. This goes for the brown and black belts too. They might feel like, hey, we know how to escape all these things, but there's always a position that we're not as familiar with. For me, it's north-south. I have a guy who's great at north-south, and when he puts me there, it is a miserable time for me. So I kind of play that position and I look to see how I can escape. So build up that escape muscle memory and knowledge by allowing yourself to be put in bad positions. If you avoid them all, you're never going to develop that skill. I'm hoping this helps. And I know it's slightly conceptual, but I'm hoping that it helps kind of identify how much time and ways you should be developing your offense and defense. If you have any questions on this, shoot me a message, dfm.2099 on Instagram and Threads. I'm always available to answer questions. If you are interested, I have a free Skool program community, DFM Coaching, BJJ on Skool, completely free. I have a bunch of courses on there, audio series, techniques that I put up, Q&A. It's a great community. Right now, I think it's at 25 people. Love to get this up to like 50 or 60. Until next time, any questions, please let me know. Thank you so much.